This episode is brought to you by Blue Door Financial. Blue Door Financial will help you save money and reduce taxes to live a fuller financial life. To learn more, visit Blue Door Financial online at BLUdoorfinancial.com. That's BLUdoorfinancial.com. Hi, I'm Bill Corcoran Jr., and I'm your host for the On the Stacks podcast. Today, I'm chatting with Katherine Pohlidal, director of the Bourger Women with Children program at Misericordia University. What's up, podcast episode 95 of the On the Stacks podcast in the Blue Door studio. Welcome to the show, Katherine. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me here today.
Yeah, this is exciting. Before we start, we have to, two things. We got to give a little shout out to our friends in Glen Lyon, our mutual friend.
Oh, yes. The one and only Lauren Gorney.
Yes.
In the GL. Yes.
Yeah. So she has still yet to, I think, give you that babushka back, from what I understand.
It is officially missing, and it is somewhere between Wannabe and Glen Lyon, Pennsylvania, as we speak right now.
Oh, my God.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, I think Lauren, I think she stole it.
I think you're right.
Yeah.
Yes. I think we're going to have to figure out how we're going to get it back. I don't know if it involves a ransom. I'm not sure.
Something needs to be done after this episode. And then part two of that is you brought a lot of really cool things with you today. And I think one of my favorites that you brought me, and I think you're the first person to do this, was you brought a gift for my son, Braden.
I was inspired by your Charlie Brown Christmas tree posting, which was a little bit sad. And I thought maybe we needed to upgrade.
Yeah,
so
he was proud of that tree, though.
I would, you know what? Maybe at this point impressed, but I want to have something for him to look forward to for next Christmas. And so Braden gets a Penn State tree this year.
Yeah. So for those listening, Katherine put together a small, bigger than the Charlie Brown tree, but a legit tree, Penn State themed.
That's right.
So thank you.
Yeah,
it's very thoughtful.
My pleasure.
So all right, let's take it back to Glen Lyon a little bit, because you brought some really cool old, I don't even know what to even call these. They're like almost like antique items from the coal mines in Glen Lyon.
Yes.
So where do these come from?
Well, I'll tell you what, Glen Lyon is well known for its history of being sort of like a coal mining patch town. And we actually had a coal breaker in our town, and that was the major industry for Glen Lyon. And so I thought it would be interesting to actually bring some equipment and I guess artifacts from that time and era, and actually specifically for my own family. I'm a fourth generation resident of Glen Lyon, and a lot of these items were items that were my grandparents, so my grandfathers. So I just thought it'd be kind of interesting to see what that looked like, and kind of gives a nod to our heritage and our legacy, and this anthracite region that we're all from here in northeastern Pennsylvania.
Yeah, so fourth generation family in Glen Lyon. Tell me more about your family and your family's history in the coal mines.
My family really came to Glen Lyon for that purpose, to work in the mining industry, and really established themselves there. My grandfather worked in the mines, as well as my, on both sides of my family, but particularly on my mother's side. They also had a small business in town. It was a very kind of insulated area at that time, because, you didn't really have the major infrastructure we have these days. So people really had a lot of their localized experience, shopping, living, everything was done in the town. And so, my grandmother actually ran a store in the town. And then, my grandfather worked in the mines. So it was just a really interesting time for me, I think, growing up, knowing that I had a relationship even with my great-grandmother in town also. This is when a community and its members really knew each other. If you walked from one side of town to the other, at least 4 or 5 people were going to call someone and let them know you're on your way. And so it was really remarkable. I have some distinct and unique memories of being a little kid and visiting my great-grandmother, and she still had a working coal stove inside of her kitchen. So it wasn't unusual. Sometimes I'd get off the school bus there and go visit her for a time before I'd go home. So it was just a really unique and great experience to have. And it really was a beautiful time in life to be a part of that town. So yeah, it's really cool.
Yeah. And you brought what are these helmets? You brought these helmets with you, and I got to wear one today, and they're like original.
Yeah. Yeah, they're the original. They were actually worn in the coal mines. We had a neighbor who was a very close family friend who actually had been a breaker boy himself when he was growing up in Glen Lyon.
And what is that? Explain that, because I feel like there's a lot of people that listening that will probably know and understand what that is, but there might be a lot of people that are listening that like, what the hell's a breaker boy?
Yeah, well, now these days, this would be a complete violation of child labor laws, right?
Yeah.
But back then, it was crazy because you had all of these young boys that would actually go and work in the mines on a daily basis for very little money, of course, at the time. And what they would do is they would pick the coal out of the shale on these runners, like sort of imagine like a sort of a assembly line of workers, and they would just pull the coal from the actual shale. So that was what they did all day long. And if you look at even historical pictures of our area, and if you really look at coal mining industry, you'll see pictures of the breaker boys, and they will resonate because these children are so young.
Yeah, how old?
Oh, we're talking 5, 6, 7 years old. I mean, really young.
That is young.
Yeah, and they would be working to support their families. And so it was, and a part of the coal mining industry, and certainly a part of our legacy in this region as well.
Wow.
Yeah.
So where is your family from?
From originally Glen Lyon. So that's the town that they were based out of. And then more of our family came, of course, like into the town and to visit and things like that. And then over time, my mom decided to, place roots in Glen Lyon and stay in the area. And then we just grew up there as well. So our whole family is from that particular area. So northeastern Pennsylvania and the surrounding areas of Glen Lyon, there's a couple of smaller towns like the Hanover Township of Nanticoke in that area too. So
Yeah.
pretty much that was the region and the area we've been from for years now, generations.
Yeah. So what else is going on in Glen Lyon these days?
Oh yeah, not
Besides NEPA.
Yeah, well, you know what? Actually, Glen Lyon is seeing a bit of a resurgence with certain things. A couple of smaller businesses have entered into the town on the main street, which is nice to see. Actually, Whiting's, which was up in Shavertown, I believe in Dallas, they've just moved out there, like a pet supply place, and we have a new garage, gas stations, K-Val's down there, and then of course Lauren and Grassroots. She has her offices on Main Street as well, which is great, and of course it's the founding location of Misericordia as well. So
Yeah.
just a couple of budding opportunities, I think, that people are taking a hold of, now that we're starting to see, a little bit of growth in our town. So it's not too shabby.
Cool.
Yeah.
So what did you do like growing up in the town?
We were real kids that really had great experiences. I'm the oldest of 4 kids, so we were sort of naturally all playmates. We were always outside, but we really grew up in the woods playing outside all day long. I'm sure my mom was thrilled because we were just gone all day, but it was not unusual for all of the kids in the town to get together. And, there's a lot of local sort of vernacular, if you will, that we use, especially when you're in a coal town, where certain things are. Glen Lyon is actually broken up into like little areas. So like I'm
little
from
sections.
Little sections. So
All
I'm
right,
like from the Canada section.
There's a Canada section?
Yeah. It's kind of like the northern part of Glen Lyon.
I didn't know this.
Because Glen Lyon only has one stop sign off its main street, so we're so big, right?
Yeah, huge town.
Huge town, don't want to get lost.
Real big in Sheboygan.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But yeah, we had all these like little areas. And so, and I actually currently, live in the town, and I live on a hill, and that area is known as Hollywood section. I think it's just because it's on a hill.
So you went from Canada to Hollywood.
Yeah, I don't want to brag, but yes.
Yeah, started from the bottom.
I did, and I really climbed up.
Yeah.
So that's how it was growing up. You had, church kind of on every corner. You also had a beer garden on every corner.
I think it's still kind of the same,
kind
though,
of
right?
the same, yeah. And then you had around us everywhere. You had the woods, and then they have what they call the strippins. That's what it's called because it's where the strip mining used to take place as well in the area. And so you have these massive areas of like sort of shale piles, shale mountains. And, for kids, that became kind of like a playground. We would just be out there all the time. If it snowed, you would sleigh ride on the stuff. If it was the summer, you were climbing it and running around in the woods. So yeah, that's kind of childhood for a lot of us who grew up in those regions. Yep.
Yeah. And what did you call these sections again? Like, do they have a name?
Yeah. So depending on where you're from, like they said, like Canada section, there was Hollywood.
Did you guys fight? Did you guys have turf wars?
Like turf wars. I would say historically speaking, that may have been the case because I think a lot of the groups of immigrants that would come through, they actually lived in certain respective areas of the town.
So
like the Italians would live in one area, the Irish lived in another, the Polish, which dominantly it's Polish.
I was going to say, I thought it was mostly all Polish.
Yes, it really is. And so that's what you would see though. And then the respective churches and everything would sort of reflect that too. So it was kind of interesting to be in a small area, but have it so subdivided. I mean, obviously now I think it's a little bit more homogenous and, it's not as broken down, but yeah, I mean, but growing up, it was more about what street did you come from, and how would you break that up? So it's kind of interesting, but yeah, I think overall though, it was just a pretty idyllic time in life and it was a great childhood to have in a town like that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then one of my other, part of one of the next chapters of your life, one of my favorite is Penn State.
Yes.
I love having a Penn Stater on here. I feel like, I know I'd probably bore all of our listeners, but, whenever I talk with another Penn Stater, it's like we can just talk like for hours on end about Penn State, even if we didn't even know each other.
That's exactly right.
You know?
Oh, it's a common thread, right?
It is.
No, it's a great experience. And Penn State has meant a lot to me and also to my whole family. I think, growing up in this area, I really actually had a great, wonderful educational experience. I went to Bishop Hoban, which is now Holy Redeemer. So that was a great experience for high school. And then going to Penn State for college was just tremendous. And so, a lot of really positive experiences out of that.
What's the history with your family in Penn State you mentioned?
Yeah, so my mom went to Penn State as well. So she pretty much inspired all of us, to really not only seriously consider college, because when you think about it too, a lot of us around here, maybe our parents were a first generation college student. So we know how important that can be. But for us, it was my mom, and she really just encouraged us to, really further our educations and to focus on that. And so, being one of 4 kids, we all ended up going there. We also think that maybe we were, told that if you didn't go there, you were going to be disowned. Maybe.
I like that.
But we all ended up going there and really had, great opportunities. A lot of us played, athletic sports and things like that. And really just had a great opportunity to meet so many people. And for me personally, I've met some of my closest, dearest friends. Even my roommate at Penn State was actually a Fulbright scholar and a person who came from Cyprus. So for me, it was my first experience of really having the international impact of my education also come through with just meeting so many people from all over the world. Yeah. And I think that's something that Penn State doesn't necessarily always capitalize on when they're talking about, the collegiate experience there. We do talk about athletics a lot. We talk about football a lot, but I think there's the whole other area of, just your education, the quality of that education, and then certainly the people that you meet, and being at a large Big Ten school like that, it just kind of invites that opportunity. And so it's been tremendous to have that. Yeah.
Yeah. So your roommate was from where?
Cyprus. Yeah.
That's like far away.
Yes, far away. It's in the Mediterranean, and it is essentially the size of the state of Connecticut.
It's a small island, and it's shaped like a violin. So if you look for it in the Mediterranean, look for the violin. But yeah, it was eye-opening for me because Elena, actually her full name was Elena Konstantinos Papanastasiou. Wow.
That's her full name.
That's a mouthful.
Right, I know. Yeah, when she graduated, it was really crazy. She had literally the longest name in the lineup, but it was really cool. But she actually was in Cyprus, and the year she was born, the Turkey actually invaded Cyprus, and the northern part of Cyprus was occupied by the Turks, and so she was actually pushed. She was a refugee. So for the first 2 years of her life, she was a refugee, and, just really learning about what it was like to be in that type of position as a child and to see the impact of that on her, and how studious she was, how serious she was, but also just a tremendously wonderful person. So
yeah. So what did that mean for you or teach you, coming from, small town, one stop sign, Glen Lyon, to going to Penn State and having a roommate from, halfway around the world and like you said, I mean, what a crazy story.
It really is. And I think it spoke to how resilient people can be and really seeing this firsthand. But I also think it made me realize that there is a whole world out there, and you're going to have to take some steps on your own to really start to figure that out, and to realize that as big as and global as it may be, it's also very possible to actually experience these things and to actually maybe go to these places too. And inevitably I ended up going to Cyprus. And in fact, it was my first international flight was to Cyprus.
Wow.
I know, right? Like just, go big or go home, I guess.
Yeah.
It was a long flight, but it was absolutely worth it. And
You went there during school?
I did. Well, I actually went there as soon as I graduated. So then
Okay.
I went to visit, and I was able to meet some of Elena's family firsthand and really just go to the island and really see it and experience it. And it was amazing to go from looking at pictures only and hearing stories to actually seeing it firsthand and to really experience that and to kind of walk in the path that she took. That really just changed my perspective, I think. And it opened up the opportunity to say to myself, hey, you know what? There's a big world out there. You better start exploring it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So what did you study at Penn State?
I actually did my undergrad there as well as my graduate work. So my undergrad was a sociology major with a psych minor. And I actually had thought about going into working with and studying organized crime. So I did a lot. My focus was criminology so it was sort of interesting. And it was really eye-opening, actually, when I took my first organized crime class. And the first thing that the professor started to discuss was Pittston.
Pittston?
Yeah. I'm like,
oh my God.
I'm familiar with that area. So it was just really interesting stuff. But so I did my undergraduate there, and I was honored to be in the University Scholars Program there at the time. It was really great. What
is that? Explain that.
Actually, it's an honors program that's for Penn State University students that, do academically well, but also are looking to do some research while they're an undergraduate student. And so while you're an undergrad, you get to do sort of like a master's level thesis, and you get to take some honors courses. You have some extra access to some pretty incredible academic opportunities. So I was able to do that along with, getting the degree. And then I actually ended up staying at Penn State and then went directly for my master's degree as well. So I have a master's in education as well from Penn State.
Cool.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I really loved it that much that, I was able to stay and do, accomplish that.
Yeah. What were some of those experiences that you were able to have?
At Penn State, I think a lot of it had to do with just being able to learn a lot more of what I had, really developed an interest in. And I think cultivating that really led to what my career outlook would be. And for me, believe it or not, it starts with entering and going into the world of the prison system in Pennsylvania, which I think in retrospect, would never have dreamt necessarily that I would do that. But my dad was actually worked at SCI Dallas. That was really the majority of his career was in corrections. And so I had been around it my whole life, pretty intrigued by it. And then I decided that I really wanted to be involved, but I wanted to go from the therapeutic end. I wanted to go into this starting to understand maybe what we could do more to help people and to understand a lot more thoroughly how people really end up in these kinds of situations. So for me, kind of cutting my teeth at SCI Dallas was pretty tremendous for a person who was just coming out of college.
Yeah,
And
did you before? Did you say that you had the intention of doing that, or you didn't? You didn't.
I didn't. No.
You had no idea. Like
no. And I wasn't really sure if this was what I wanted. I think I had to explore it. And this happens, I think, a lot to people, especially when they go for their college degrees and they're trying to figure things out in their 20s. They might explore for a bit and maybe, is this what I want? And so for me, I had a lot more to do with, let me have this experience and let's see where it goes. And I will tell you that it was one of the most interesting experiences I ever had in my career. I think I also learned the most quickly in the time that I worked there. The inmates were really insightful. And I just think they really had gone through such tremendous hardships themselves in their lives to learn a lot more about just perspectives that you would never have, been able to gather any other way, So for me, it was really eye-opening, but it also mobilized and inspired me to really drive my career into the next level, which was when I was leaving. I remember one of the inmates actually talked with me and said, you're leaving and we understand that you have to continue on with your career, but this is the one thing that we ask from you, which is try to prevent this. And he sort of pointed at himself. And I remember that, just thinking, try to prevent this, try to prevent this from happening to somebody else.
And how old were you at this point?
I was 24 years old.
And how old do you think that guy was?
He was not that much older, frankly. I would imagine he was probably in his late 20s, early 30s, really had at the time, at least, so much life ahead, and he was incarcerated.
Probably in there for probably a decent amount of time.
Absolutely.
Or doing a long sentence, if I had to guess.
Absolutely. Yeah. And, again, you're a criminal offender, you're really looking at this and having to realize this is your life from that perspective. It's such a vantage point. I think sometimes we glorify some of that stuff, or we see it in the media, or we think that we understand it. But the reality is we really don't. Unless you're on the other side of those walls, you don't really see that until you're in it. And
can you explain that a little more?
Yeah. I think it's really, it's sad on some level, of course, because, you see that there's so much human potential and a lot of it's locked up. And we're the most incarcerated country in the world. So, this is some of the tough realities that people face. But I think what I started to ask and what I started to question was, what is the root cause? What was the common denominator, or are there common denominators among people here that, we need to start paying closer attention to, that we may be able to do more to not only prevent people from kind of ending up in these types of situations, but what can we do more as a society to improve the circumstances of people at large? And I think that for me, it was very eye-opening to realize that most of these individuals had been in poverty most of their lives. Most of them had had horrible family situations themselves, had been either abused or had historical, issues with parents, things like that, neglected, abandoned, you name it. And then this becomes part of the pattern and unfortunately the cycle. And so when that really resonated with me, when one of the inmates said, just try to do what you can to prevent this, it was like, okay, well then we have to start, I always say this all the time, which is we have to look at a problem practically, but we also have to rip it up by the root. And the only way to really do that is to truly understand it. We have to really get in there. And then when you finally rip up the root, and what are you staring at? That's where the solution's going to spring. That's going to be the place where you start to develop a plan. And I think my whole career has been really resonating through that whole entire experience.
It all kind of stemmed from that one inmate.
Yeah. And just really being very direct about it. And then having that, when I'm reflecting on it now, especially too, to realize that, that is something that you could do. And that I'm a true believer that even one individual can make an impact on others. Like, you don't have to underestimate yourself in this lifetime. It's time to do something. And for me, I think I've always been a bit more action-oriented. That's just been who I am. And I think for me, it mobilized me on another level that, maybe I could do something more. And so I started to make those inroads and some of those steps, and started to realize that maybe I could prevent some of this.
Yeah. So was it the same inmate that made you this, or was that a different...
This is actually the same inmate.
Oh, was it?
That's why I have it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Explain it. So for people that may not follow us on social media and can't see it, explain what it is.
Yeah. So when a person's incarcerated, obviously they don't have a lot of things, they don't have a lot of possessions or things like that. And so there's a human ingenuity that goes into maybe even like a gift giving or whatever. Improvising and looking at what are the resources that you have. And so it's not unusual, or at least not at the time, for an inmate to, if you're going to make something, this particular person actually took magazines, and you can weave them into what looks almost like imagine like a basket, but you can weave it into a shape. And so because I had been working in a therapeutic community in the prison, and the focus was on helping inmates who were getting close to parole really improve themselves and work on issues, especially drug and alcohol historical problems that they may have had, he decided that he was going to create this with magazines, put a cross at the top of it, and then in the insert in the middle, it has a Serenity Prayer, which is very common. You hear this a lot when people are in recovery and they say the Serenity Prayer. It can be used for a lot of reasons, but that's another one of them. But and he gave that to me. He had made that, and he gave that to me when I was leaving. And that was the message that he sent with that, and I'm just like, okay, I've message received. I hear you loud and clear. And I've kept it with me, and it has been every single office I've had in my whole career.
And he's had an impact on your life.
Absolutely. I learned the most from that position, that job, and that role. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was really at that point really listening, and I felt like that was the spot I really needed to be in at that time. Yeah. A lot of messages sent, for sure.
So what did you do after that? You said you were on your way out the door.
Yeah. So I started to work more in the addictions field. I spent a long time actually working in a few places, but Karen Foundation was a place in Wernersville that I worked for a period of time working with adolescents. So I started to move toward more of the adolescent population and trying to help young people who were struggling really try to work on whatever their issues might be. We know how pervasive addiction can be and how destructive it can be. therapy, it's also a very challenging and a difficult thing to do to recover from such a thing. So it's something that's been a huge component in my career. I became a certified addictions counselor, really worked hard at developing a skill set that was going to help as many people as I could, particularly in the adolescent range. So, I worked there for several years, was able to oversee the adolescent treatment center there. I've really learned, again, a lot, especially around families at that point in time too, and the struggles that families might face, and really learned a lot more lessons. And I think this is what I've started to accumulate over time. So learning and experiencing this, I think my best educators have been the people that I've tried to serve and tried to help. So, I did that for several years, and then I moved toward higher education. It actually became a thing for me, and it's sort of bizarre. I was sort of in this transition. I wasn't sure if I wanted to stay in like a residential treatment setting or if I wanted to do something different. And I decided I actually took a trip, and I went to Germany. And this part of traveling for me that has always been sort of eye-opening and really interesting. But I happened to be in Stuttgart in Germany, and I was standing across the street at a parade. And I looked up, and there was this beautiful old buildings there, very old historical space. And over the one door, it just said Zacharias Ursinus. It said the name Ursinus. And I looked at it and went, I had a friend who went there to Ursinus. That rings a bell to me for some reason. And I just kind of walked away from it. And about 3 weeks later, I returned back to the States, and I was just sort of exploring because I'm like, well, what jobs, opportunities, and here's this job at Ursinus College right outside of King of Prussia. And it literally was right there in front of me. It was really weird. It really, really was weird. And you know what? I went after it. I pursued it.
You had to at that point.
Yeah, it was like a sign.
It was meant to be.
It was. And I think if you're open to that happens more often than we realize if you're open to it. And I took it and I embraced it. And I ended up at Ursinus College for almost 8 years.
What did you do there?
Working there as a clinician. I was a clinician for the campus. I worked with many college students in their undergraduate years, and I became the therapist that, students would turn to, when they had concerns or needed support or needed help.
So you were like a therapist, like on campus?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I didn't even know that was a thing, I feel like.
I think a lot of people don't realize that.
I think maybe nowadays, but like looking back on, when I was in college, I don't even think I knew that was a thing. And I think, as a society, I think we need to make that more, make more people aware that there's people like you.
I totally agree with that. I think we've come a long way. I think you're right.
I agree. Yeah.
Yeah. If I would look at it in retrospect, I feel like there were a lot of students that found us by accident. Frankly, they didn't really even realize they had services on campuses. I really think counselors, social workers, they're just truly unsung heroes because they do their work behind closed doors. The confidentiality component of their work is very important. And so you don't necessarily see what they're doing all the time.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think back then it was not so visible, right?
Yeah, I think that's what I was trying to say. It's not as visible.
Not as visible. And frankly, I think there was a lot of stigma attached to
Definitely.
it. Like, what's wrong with you? Why are you seeing someone?
Yeah.
Just kind of looking at that. I really do think that in the last maybe 10 years, but particularly in the last 5, and especially since COVID hit, we have seen this uptick in people who are higher profile, talking about their experiences, engaging in therapy, advocating for mental health awareness, looking at like Simone Biles, for example, or Michael Phelps, people who have said, hey, look, go get help if you need help, talk to a therapist. I really think that advocacy and that work has really helped to reduce the stigma. And I see students all the time just openly discussing these things now a lot more than ever before. And I do believe that's the way to go, because certainly people shouldn't be quietly suffering through, whatever they may be going through. And there are services on campuses. So it's an extraordinary job to have. I think the people who do that work are extraordinary human beings, and they certainly save people's lives. So it can be extremely rewarding. But it's a very real career path to take, and one that has a profound impact, not just on those students, but on the therapist as well.
Yeah. So what did you learn about that experience? It seems to be kind of a theme of as we're going here. It seems like every different job you've had, you've had some either profound or just a meaningful experience that kind of either led to the next thing or taught you something and that eventually helped you down the road?
Yeah, I absolutely think so. It's all interconnected, I believe. And I think when you really look back at it, and even when we were talking about doing this podcast, I started to be a little bit more, reflective in terms of my experiences and thinking about everything. And the truth of the matter is, it really has been sort of this path, and just been taking it, and it has built me to this point, to what I'm doing currently. But it all informed me. I think it all becomes a formula for better understanding around your role, your purpose, and maybe even trying to discover what your passion is. For me, I think that my experience with college students was to really understand more thoroughly the college student experience and to really understand what people may go through and how much they really do need support. I think a lot of people are pretty stoic and they go through things and they're really good at kind of covering or hiding. The truth of the matter is there are a lot of individuals out there who really have had to push through quite a bit. And so when you realize that, again, you can make an impact and that, there are things that you can do to help people find their purpose, their passion, their success, it does matter. And that there certainly should be an investment in helping people along the way. So I feel like higher education became the realm that I felt I was the right fit for. And it really helped me to evolve and understand. So going from the path from a prison environment all the way to more of an educational adolescent environment with addictions to young people who are still adolescent, but maybe more in the higher ed setting, really then led me to my current job, which is really more my passion, which is the director of the Women with Children program at Misericordia. So
yeah. So how did this job come about? Like how did you go from the other college now to Misericordia?
I wasn't really sure with what I wanted to do, right? I was at Ursinus and there had been some changes. The president that we had there was beloved, unfortunately got sick and had passed away. John Strasburger, he was an amazing leader in person. And then some changes happened and I just thought, okay, maybe this is time. It's 8 years or so. I need to start thinking about where I want to go with my career path. And I started exploring, and this job posted at Misericordia University, and I grew up in this area, did not know much about Misericordia. And I also didn't know anything about this program at all. And I started reading the job description, and the job description literally sounded like my work experience, and trying to work with first generation college students and supporting them through higher education. But with the unique aspect of also bringing children with them, bringing, the child or the children to the college education setting and providing an opportunity for those who are in poverty to access education. And I think this is where there's that full circle moment that I really think has resonated the most. And this is why I talked about that inmate in the first place, which is one of the first days that I was at Misericordia and had, gotten the job and was thrilled to be there. I had been meeting the families that had been entering the program. And one of the families who was brand new came in and there were two boys in the family, and the one little boy came up to me, and he must have been about 5 years old, absolutely beautiful little boy. And he walks up to me and he looks me straight in the face and he says to me, when I grow up, I'm going to jail. And I'm like, what? What did you just say? And I mean, he's 5 years old, And I'm like, and he said it again. He's like, when I grow up, I'm going to jail. And, in my mind, I was processing this and I'm thinking, what, are you trying to test me a little bit? Like how I'm going to react to this, or what are you thinking here? So I said to him, like, hey, listen, I'm hearing what you just said. And I think maybe what we need to do is sit down with your mom and let's talk about this, what you're saying to me. Let's do that. And I remember we sat in the kitchen of the house, for the program. We have homes for our program. And I remember sitting in the kitchen, mom was crying and he started getting a little upset because I think he thought he was in trouble. It wasn't really he was in trouble, but we wanted to address this. And she said, that's all he's ever really known. His experience has been that so many people this is what happens. And so maybe it was a test, or maybe it was to see how I would react, but that was the moment. And what's ironic is it went from SCI Dallas, a loop. It was like a giant loop. And this time at Misericordia, which is only a few miles away. from that other respective
crazy.
institution. Yeah. And I thought, oh my gosh, here it is. That's it.
How do you prevent that?
How do you prevent that? And there it is.
Wow.
Yeah. And that mom's now a college graduate.
That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Holy crap. That is so cool.
Yeah. And it's the truth. I mean, and I think that's what's really remarkable is seeing the struggle that people go through and not knowing where they're going to turn, like not knowing what they can do, and seeing these women, with the Women with Children program, these are all single moms who are living in poverty. They are coming with their children. They are so vulnerable.
Yeah. So explain this program. What is it?
Yeah. So to me, it's the masterclass type of program that most, if not all, universities should have. And it is really quite amazing. What we do is we are a program that is designed to help single moms who are living in poverty or the working poor come to school. They come to Misericordia University for 4 years where they can go to school full time to get their undergraduate degrees, and they can bring their children with them. They can bring up to 3 children between the ages of 2 through 8 years of age upon admission, and then older than 12 by the time mom graduates. And we accept moms from all over the country, but we do prioritize for women through northeastern Pennsylvania first. But we do have women from all over the country that come to our program, and they reside with their children on our lower campus. We have 3 homes right now, but the good news is we're expanding. We're actually going to be opening a 4th house this coming year now in 2022 right now. So that's great news. And we will be at full capacity able to support 20 families, 20 single moms and their children for up to 4 years. And the housing is free. That is a gift from the program that we support the housing component so that moms don't have to worry about the burden of rent, which is essentially what had been the primary barrier back in 2000. Sister Jean Mazeros, who's certainly one of my heroes and mentors, is a sister of mercy at Misericordia who was noticing that women were applying and they just weren't coming to Misericordia. And so they explored that to find out what was going on. And what they discovered is that they were single moms, and that the cost of school was just impossible to afford.
So this was before the program.
This is before the program.
Okay,
this is what inspired it.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah,
so
in 2000.
Single mothers were applying to school and just not coming.
And not coming because, no. And they
were
getting in, academically viable, but just not getting, going. And they found out it was just, they couldn't afford it because the burden of rent, the expenses of living made it impossible. And so the decision was made to take a former convent from the Sisters of Mercy, transform it into housing for single mothers and children, and to launch this program. And so that's exactly what happened. And that housing was free for the participants, and then they could go to school full time. That was the expectation, is that they would go to school full time and raise their children. And since then, now, we're going into 2022, and we've expanded the program 3 separate times. So in 2007, we added more. So it was the first capacity was for 6 families in the convent, and then we added another house in 2007. So that became the capacity for 10. That was the Poly House. 2016, we added the Moffat house, so that's 16 families. And then this year it'll be the addition of Anne's house, which will bring our capacity to 20. And that makes us the largest and only single mother program in the state of Pennsylvania to do this.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. And our goal is to break the intergenerational cycle of poverty. And we do it through a 2-generation model that I've been working on and developing since 2013.
Can you explain that?
Yeah. What we've done, and, when I first got on board with this, I looked at how amazing it was that we had this sort of residential kind of program here on the lower campus at the university, but I wanted to take it up a notch, and then of course wanted to take it up several notches. And so I was like, let's just keep adding programming. And Sandy Johnson, who's our coordinator and certainly just as involved with all of this and absolutely essential. We've really developed this where we said, look, we're going to do what we can to not only support the mom, but we're also going to do what we can to support the children, because these are key developmental times in their lives that they're with us and residing with us. And remember that whole full circle effect. What can we do to strengthen them, build them up, and make sure that they feel that this is a future that they can have as well? And so we do everything we can. We provide mental health services, counseling, family support services. We have our 4 houses are community living environments. So our moms share spaces on the main floors of the houses, and they each get their own respective bedrooms and bathrooms. But what you see happen is we build families. but these systems build together. And so you start to see that the children that live in these homes become like siblings to each other. The moms become very sister-like to each other. They're support systems. And so this community living becomes not only probably one of the most amazing assets of our program, but certainly one that creates a more holistic atmosphere for us. And then we do a lot for the children too. Every family enrichment activities constantly. We make sure that we celebrate every birthday, every holiday. I even made swimming lessons a requirement. Every child has to learn how to swim by the time mom graduates. Just making sure that they have access to education and quality care all the way through. And what you see at the end is a family that's not only getting a degree and going on to a professional career, but that is far healthier and far more intact going out into the world and being able to take on the challenges that they're going to face next. So it's really about building the family and building the opportunity at the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to go back to that young male child. What year was that? That was that your first day, did you say?
That was in the first week.
First week.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the first week. And they were just new to the program as well. So I arrived with a cluster of families. We sort of landed at Misericordia at the same time. So we embarked on this whole journey together in that first semester, and they all graduated.
And what year was this?
2013.
Okay.
Yeah, they all graduated. In fact, they've all since now
you said
graduated.
That kid was 5 at the time?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So what is he now? I'm bad at math, like 13 or something?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Do you still keep in touch with any of these?
Yes, all of them.
How are they doing?
Great.
Yeah?
Yeah. All of these families, I will tell you that, it's transformative. I keep saying this, but it's the truth. It's just as impactful on me and our coordinator, Sandy, as it is on the families, and even on our college. The culture of our university is one in which, we drive this mission. We talk about the Sisters of Mercy. We talk about this legacy, again, a full circle effect. We talk about growing up in a coal town, and the reality is,
we got to talk about this, this coal town that is integrated with the sisters and the university. And you told me if I held up this mercy sign that the sisters would love me for it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like I'll become a saint or something. I think you said
St. Bill. Right? Yeah. Did you know that? Yeah. Congratulations.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
You're
welcome.
Yeah.
Good for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So sorry for interrupting the story, but to talk about that whole coal mining thing, that kind of.
Yeah. The Sisters of Mercy started in Ireland. Catherine Pohlidal, who's the founding sister, established this order in Dublin in Ireland, and really over time started to expand. But their biggest intent was to help to educate women and children who were living in poverty. That was a big part of being a Sister of Mercy and their role. And when they came to the United States, they started to expand in the United States. That was their intention here too. And so when the Sisters of Mercy came to this area in northeastern Pennsylvania and established Misericordia University, their intention was to educate the daughters of the coal miners in this region. So they knew that these young women who were living in poverty often, and certainly with families that would not be able to necessarily afford a college education, would be given that opportunity. And that's exactly what they did.
And that was like almost 100 years ago.
Yeah, that's right. We're really coming upon that. So 1924 is when Misericordia was established. So we're almost there. And I think it's really remarkable when you hear about the sisters. Maybe people sometimes think, well, nuns, sisters, they have these sort of maybe an idea in their head. Maybe it's like Sister Act or something. I don't know what they're thinking.
Yeah.
But it's not all.
But what's the reality? Yeah.
This is the reality. The reality is these sisters are very progressive, and they have stood for a lot of very important things that are, in fact, I think pretty important now. They've talked about the advocacy of, women and children and immigration and the stewarding of the earth and access to clean water. These are things that the sisters have been championing for years. And frankly, on some level, we're catching up. But I think because they have been so entrenched and working with the poor, they understand what the needs are. And they also understand where the barriers exist. And so they've really championed this region in a way that I think sometimes isn't necessarily recognized. And I certainly appreciate them and I appreciate the institution, but more so the mission, more above anything else. And I think that is true now as it was back in 1924, which is providing access to education really does change people's lives. It really fundamentally can change the trajectory of a life of a person who never thought they'd have that type of opportunity. And I think when we look at poverty through the lens of what you can have in your life, there's sort of a tendency to have diminished expectations of people in poverty, of the circumstances. How do we change that? And I think sometimes it takes a whole institution, or it takes an entire order or group to really push these initiatives forward. And they certainly have done that here. So the Mercy word represents not only the Sisters of Mercy, but the Sisters of Mercy we have core charisms at Misericordia. So it's mercy, service, justice, and hospitality. Those are the 4 anchors, pillars of our institution. And the sisters have absolutely worked that through every fiber of on every level at that institution. So, becoming a Mercy Associate, which is where I received that from Sister Jean, actually, Mazeros gave that to me, is an indicator that you're a Mercy Associate. And basically what that means is we also reflect the mission and the charisms and support and back the Sisters of Mercy. So we're sort of like the companion group to the sisters, and it's taken very seriously. We actually, one of the largest groups of Mercy Associates anywhere is at Misericordia University. So
wow.
Yeah, it's a pretty impressive thing. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Why are you so passionate about this? I can see it in your face, hear it in your voice. What is it for you?
I think it's a lot of different things. I think it has a lot to do with when you have a value system that reflects the mission of a place that you work for. It doesn't feel like a job anymore. If it does feel like your passion, and it feels like something, you want to do every day. And I think that that's a very important aspect to what I do. And I feel very fortunate that that's what I'm able to do. But I do believe it also reflects this region. If you think about it, Bill, this area was always known, the moniker was Valley with a Heart, right? And I actually think that there's a lot of that still left here. I think it's a strength of our area and our region, but I believe that it's really something that builds and shows not only a university and its culture at its best, but also a region, and I think that lends to this. So, I'm very passionate about working with people, and that's obvious since I'm talking about my whole career, and why that's so important. But when you find a place that wants you to do that and encourages you to do that, then you just light up. Every day is just a new day to do it more. So why not?
And it's more mission based.
Yeah.
I think that's important to understand.
Yes. Yeah. I think we're helping people who are in poverty get out of poverty, and really changing the course of their lives. And in the case of what we're doing, which is truly a 2-gen model, where we're really working with a mom and the children, we've now seen that the children of our earliest graduates from the Women with Children program are now college grads themselves. Wow. Yeah. So it works. We see that it works. And I mentioned before, we're like a big family. We all stay connected. We're all in touch. Since 2013, 80% of our women have gone up to a master's degree or more. I mean, they don't stop at an undergrad, because you get rid of that theory or that idea of diminished expectation. And the women know, I drive them crazy, because I'll be like, because my expectation level is up off the charts. Yeah. I expect everything from them. I expect greatness from them. And, the reality is they deliver. They find what they're really capable of. They get their footing and they really get it. And what's awesome is their kids watch them do that. So they learn that this is possible. So they are demonstrating this, they're role modeling this, and then they replicate it. They're actually doing it too. So yeah, it's very important.
Yeah. What have they taught you?
The women have taught me more than we don't have enough time in our podcast. I mean, every year is something new, and and poverty also teaches me something new every year. Every year I learn about a new barrier. Every year I learn about a new struggle, something that I didn't think of and that we have to incorporate into our program. I always say our program's always evolving, right? It's just constant. Like, what is the next thing that we're going to have to deal with? And it's like boxing with Rocky every year, here we go. Like, what's the next hit we're going to take? But the truth of the matter is, it makes you a lot more sophisticated in how you're going to handle it and how you're going to approach it. Because barriers can become very defeating. And what we do is we champion through that. We have to stay that way. We have to kind of keep the position of lead horse, if you will. You know what I mean? We're always going to be the one going, all right, let's next and let's go there. Let's get this done. But I think that the women, again, it's remarkable, the amount of work, the work ethic. I always say, we're not here just to work toward a degree. You're going to work smart and you're going to work hard. and that combination, you see these outcomes that are astonishing, but their ability to sacrifice, their ability to work hard, their ability to work around the clock. I mean, you have a child now, imagine sometimes some of these moms, they're by themselves, with this like 3 children, and somehow they're doing it. And all these children are under the age of 12,
It's a lot.
It's a lot, right? And they're going to school full time. They're working. They're still earning. They're doing everything they need to do, plus taking care of all of their children. It's just an amazing feat. And I just think that real drive and the courage to do it are just remarkable. So examples of that every day, really, it keeps us going. Every time I get tired, I think about how tired they must be, and I keep doing something else.
Yeah, you kind of maybe already answered my next question, but I was going to say, how do you keep that mindset of like constantly, like you said, you referred to it as like the Rocky, like you're constantly battling.
Yeah.
Like, how do you keep that mindset of like just overcoming that next thing, the next thing? What do you do?
It's a good question. I think, I think I've always been a little bit of a fighter in terms of like, if I feel like something's not just, or I feel like there's something that we can do, there's a solution. I tend to be a bit of a systems thinker. Like I look at sort of the bigger picture, and then I start to evaluate it and think, okay, well, what can the strategy be? So for me, it becomes a way of, how do I out strategize the situation? What are we doing to come up with more solutions? Because at the end of the day, I see the impact, I see the outcome. And the outcome always reminds me of the purpose. So it's really driven with that in mind. And, and sometimes you do get tired. There's no way around that. You're going to have to acknowledge that. There's going to be challenges along the way. But that, for whatever reason, and I know this is going to sound crazy again, but I'll just mention it, which is every time we've hit a roadblock, and Sandy Johnson can attest to this because she's experienced it too. I warned her when she first started the job as a coordinator. So you're going to see some sort of interesting things happen. And I said the best example is we have to fundraise constantly, right? I grant write all the time, to fund our program. That's how we get through and do our program. But something will break, right? And like we had, right when she started, I said, watch what happens. We had a refrigerator break in one of the houses, and we're like, so facilities goes, they come back, they call us, say it's shot, we're gonna have to replace it. I'm thinking, great, here we go. We're gonna have to get another refrigerator. How are we gonna fund that? What are we gonna do? And literally 5 minutes later, I get a phone call. The phone rings. Sandy, thank God, is there because she's my witness. And it's actually my friend Linda Rowe, who's at Geisinger. And she's like, yeah, hey, you know what? Would you guys happen to need a refrigerator? Because we're moving our offices and we have this like extra refrigerator. And we thought maybe this would be great we could donate to your program and help you. And I just looked at Sandy and she looked at me. She's like, oh my God. And I'm like, this happens all the time. So I don't know how to explain that.
Crazy.
Mm-hmm. All the time.
Wow.
All the time. Cars. Yeah. Because our moms have to have a car for our program. We help them, of course. But, if it really breaks down all the way, we've had some people call, we have a car. We'd like to donate. Can we help you? Or, it just happens like just when we need it. And I always say, if you're fundamentally doing the right thing, things seem to land in place.
Yeah.
So I just kind of go with that. And it's not rocket science. It's just, some of it's just very practical, being smart about it and staying open. And it happens all the time though. And I feel like I'm a tremendous beneficiary to the generosity of this region. People don't necessarily realize when you're I'm essentially running a nonprofit, right? Built under this university. And when you are on the receiving end of that and you understand just how generous people are, it's incredible. And it's amazing around here. Really, people don't understand that necessarily all the time. But there's a lot of generosity coming out of this region, and not always from people who have a lot of means. I don't measure generosity that way. Generosity can mean that you have very little, but you still give. And I think there's a lot of that. So it's a good day to be in this role. Put it that way. Every day is a good day to be in this role.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So what else? What else are you working on nowadays?
Well, Sister Jean just retired last year, and I think I might have driven her to it. She looks at me and I'm like, sorry, but yeah. She's amazing. But I'm always coming up with or thinking of ideas or plans or programs. And there had been, because of my role and because I have to fundraise or write grants, I'm always looking at different philanthropic groups or organizations and things. And I had been following this organization out of New York City called the Robin Hood Foundation. amazing philanthropic group that has really focused their attention on New York City and the surrounding area. And obviously we know New York's huge and vast and very populated. So it was really interesting that I had been mentioning this to Sandy quite a bit at work. And all of a sudden, they announced that they were going to launch a new national pilot program with Poverty Mobility Labs. The idea was that they were going to look for areas around the United States that they were going to create pilot programs. They were going to challenge areas to create pilot programs to develop ideas around sustainable solutions for families out of poverty, which of course,
Yahtzee.
I felt like, yeah, right? Bingo. Just thinking that's crazy because that's exactly what we do all the time. And then it turns out that they selected northeastern Pennsylvania as one of the areas for a pilot.
Did you have to apply, or did they just select it?
They selected it. I don't necessarily think there was an application process for that.
Wow.
They just selected this region, and
So it was meant to be.
It was meant to be, and through the Weinberg Foundation and CEO as being a host site to that, I started paying very close attention. And originally, actually, interestingly enough, we weren't necessarily invited to the table. And I was just like, you know what, we need to be at this particular table. This is very, very important. So we went through a whole year through COVID and really went through this whole process where we gathered as a region, northeastern Pennsylvania region, with a lot of different groups into a steering committee. And we were asked to then complete a pilot proposal for ideas around what they would select. And so I had pitched a proposal with the women based on our model for the Women with Children program, but initiating this and creating a new onboarding process that would focus on Head Start parents and Hands of Tunkhannock. That they're just amazing programs, both of them. I can't say enough about Kathy Franco and Lynn Evans, just amazing people, and just said, you know what, why don't we try to partner, develop this model, and see if we can get more families to have access to education. And so, interestingly enough, the Robin Hood Foundation came back and said, out of all the pilot proposals, this is the one we want you to do, but we want you to do it, and that's it. Do this, and replicate it out, and build it. And so really through the pandemic and over this last year and now going into this year, I'm really, really happy to say that we are developing a new program that's going to be here in northeastern Pennsylvania. It's going to cover a 5-county footprint. So that's Luzerne, Lackawanna, Wayne, Wyoming, and Susquehanna counties, where we're going to take the model and we're going to bump it out and we're going to partner. And so we have already amazing partners that are working with us. And our idea is, and what we're going to be calling it, is a Parent Pathways Program of Northeastern Pennsylvania. And we're going to help more parents, particularly single parents, but parents who are living near the poverty line or in poverty, access opportunities for higher education or high-skilled trades. But either way, it's going to create pathways where they're going to be able to access opportunities, where they're able to create opportunity for earning a family-sustaining livable wage and get out of poverty for good. So here we go.
Amazing. Mm-hmm. Congratulations.
Thank you. I'm really happy about it. It's been intense, but I will tell you that what's been most remarkable has been the reciprocity and the support that so many people have expressed throughout this area. Not a single organization, group, or institution in this region said no. Every single group that we've approached and talked to has said yes. And so I'm really proud to say that we are really covering that 5-county footprint, and we will be doing this pilot for 3 years. So we're going into year 2 right now. And our goal is to launch by this fall and to start by onboarding 100 families. So we're really going to be looking at, higher ed institutions like Luzerne County Community College and their KEYS program, Misericordia, of course, with our residential program. We have Head Start on board. We have Johnson College on board. Just a lot of different programs, like I mentioned, Hands of Tunkhannock, where we're going to basically collaborate, and where parents are already in place to support their children in a specific program, we're going to now focus on the parent. And really create these opportunities. So, and it doesn't have to be higher education either. It can be also apprenticeship programs, high skilled trades, because not everybody wants to go to, college necessarily, but they certainly want to earn, an income that's going to support themselves and their families. Yeah. So, our hope is that by doing this and really combining forces, it's going to be a new model that we can actually use, and we'll see how it goes. I'm sure we're going to refine it and build it more as we go. But that's our first round, and our first template will be executed in the fall of this year.
Awesome.
Yeah. So in our downtime, that's what we're all doing.
Yeah.
Because we're all, we have nothing else to do, right?
Yeah. So like, how do you find these families? Do they find you, or is it a bit of both?
It's going to be a bit of both. So we're going to have families that are already engaged in these respective programs will get information on this new opportunity, and we'll be able to help guide them. But we will also be definitely promoting it through a number of different vehicles, whether it's going to be online, through social media. We're going to have the ability to go through a very easy access first phase process where you just fill out like sort of a real quick application, and then you would just submit that, and then we will pursue them. And the idea is to make it sort of this user-friendly, easy way of accessing opportunities, and then we help provide the guidance and support they may need in order to take the next steps. And what's great is we're so collaborative in this process that you don't go from one institution or one program and then that's it. There's no gap. So it's just going to be sort of like a gentle handoff, and we're all staying connected. So it's pretty cool. And I think it's going to be really exciting to see how this is going to play out. Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, best of luck with it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm really excited.
Yeah. So jumping back to Misericordia, how can our listeners connect with you online and find out some more information? Yeah.
Well, anytime. Misericordia University is pretty easily accessed university. You can get online and just go to our website. It's www.misericordia.edu. If you want to look at specifically the Women with Children program, you can enter the same email address, but just put WWC at the end, /WWC. I'm more than happy to take any inquiry. If someone wants to just contact me directly, they can at 570-674-6728. That's my direct line. I'm more than happy to talk to anyone who has an inquiry. You can certainly email us too, and you'll see all of our information and our ability to be connected to or contacted through our admissions office or through Women with Children program. All of our information, our brochure and application are right there online. So I would say feel free. We're also on social media, Facebook. If you look at Bourger Women with Children program, we will appear there, as well as Instagram. So I would say if there's anybody who has an inquiry or even wants to just follow up with us, we're more than happy to speak to any mom who's out there who is looking or considering, acquiring their education. And I will mention, you don't have to be a traditional 4-year undergraduate student. You can be also even a transfer student. We have had moms who were in their mid-40s who are coming to school. We have traditional age high school students who are graduating from college and want to get their 4-year degree. So all are welcome at our program and our institution.
Excellent.
Yeah.
And before we end, we got to tell one more time, tell Lauren you have a bone to pick with her about the babushka.
Yeah. Lauren, I want my babushka back. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
I know where you live, Lauren.
Right up
the street.
What turf is she on? Is she in the same turf or?
Oh yeah. She's always going to be the same turf, but I will say, funny anecdotal little story too, is I've known her quite a long time. And I do have this like really funny memory of her being a little kid in her like suits, like snowsuit, pink snowsuit. And she's being pushed down, a sled and sleigh riding and screaming. And I think the person who was pushing her was me. So.
Nice.
And her voice is the same. Sorry, just kidding.
Not kidding.
Not kidding. But no, she's awesome. But yeah, she's right there too. So yeah,
awesome.
Our neighbor Lauren needs to give me back the babushka.
Yeah, she does. Yeah.
We need another who wore it better. Little showcase.
And demand-free pierogi for all this time of, you not having the babushka. I'm sure you've gone through a lot of trauma.
I would not mind bartering with that. That's actually fair. I think that's fair. I think you and I both need to at least have at least one platter of meat pierogi, wherever they may be right now. Yeah.
I agree.
So she's probably sleeping right now under like a, blanket of dough and potato.
Most likely, I'd say. Maybe she's wearing your babushka though.
She's keeping her head warm that way. Yeah. Who knows with her?
Yeah. Who knows? And this is great. This was a lot of fun. It was really great to learn more about you. Like I said, I love connecting with fellow Penn Staters because I feel like we always have that Penn State connection as any other Penn Stater can listen and agree with that.
Oh, 100%. Should we do one more once? We should do the We Are.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, we are.
Penn State.
Yeah, and thanks again. Braden thanks you.
Yeah.
He can't talk
pleasure.
yet, but he thanks you for the tree.
Absolutely, my pleasure.
Yeah, so he'll have that tree forever.
Good.
Yeah, it was cool.
Good. Well, we'll just add to it.
You were going to have to.
Yeah, we'll have to be looking for our Penn State ornaments now to add to his tree.
Yeah.
Yeah. By the time he's Penn State bound,
you can take it with him.
He could take it with him. Could be in his dorm.
There we go. Yeah.
I'm glad we have his future planned.
Yeah. This is great. Thanks again, Katherine Pohlidal, Bourger Women with Children program at Misericordia University, on the Stacks podcast in the Blue Door studio. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you so much, Bill.
If you'd like to learn more about the On the Stacks podcast, be sure to search the hashtag #OnTheStacks on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn. If you enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe and leave a review. We'll catch you next time on The Stacks.